Let's start by the hot topic of the week, Iran conversations. I'm joined here by Ilber and Chip from our team. Gentlemen, welcome. Chip, a big week for U.S. Iran. A lot of capabilities are in the region. What do you expect is going to happen?
Yes, well, I think it's been an incredible week of ratcheting up tensions. In that podcast with Norm Rule, one of the key things that he said at the beginning is that diplomacy isn't dead yet. I think since our podcast on Monday, diplomacy really is hanging by a thread. There were two important events yesterday. The first is there were 6.5 hours of talks between the U.S. delegation and an Iranian delegation mediated by the Omanis that, according to all sides, ended inconclusively, though the Omanis pointed optimistically to a fourth round of talks, technical talks, that are supposedly going to be held next week in Vienna. What I noted is there was sort of a muted response from Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff, the two U.S. delegation leads, about the talks. So we'll see whether those actually produced a breakthrough or not. I tend to suspect probably not, based on what press reports was a very tough U.S. proposal that essentially called for Iran to completely dismantle what's left of its nuclear program, and in exchange for minimal to zero sanctions relief in the immediate term. So very tough terms. What we know of the Iranian position going into the talks is they were looking for some sort of 3 to 5 year suspension of enrichment, more aggressive sanctions relief in exchange for such a concession. This seems well out of the bounds of what President Trump is going to accept. The second important event from yesterday was the Centcom commander, Admiral Brett Cooper, briefed military options to President Trump. And as we've seen reported extensively in the press over the last several days, there's been an incredible force buildup in the region. The United States now has 2 aircraft strike carrier groups, one in the Eastern Mediterranean, one in the Arabian Sea, roughly 400 aircraft amassed in the region and in Europe, and that's not counting global strike capabilities that would be launched from the United States. It also doesn't include what those carrier strike groups also have, which are submarines and Aegis cruisers capable of delivering dozens of Tomahawk missiles. So I think we're really at the precipice of potentially a military conflict. Today, the vice president should be getting a briefing from Omani Foreign Minister Busaidi, sort of outlining the last Iranian position. I expect that will not be accepted. The president 2 weeks ago implied that come Monday or Tuesday, that would be the end of his patience. So I think the next few days will really tell the tale.
Ilber, you have covered this issue for a while at the Pentagon, at the White House. What's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with Chip. I think military action appears imminent, even if the diplomacy, as Chip put it, is hanging by the thread. I think we're seeing already some tactical indicators. U.S. Embassy in Baghdad is drawing down. U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is drawing down. We saw reports that China has asked its citizens to leave Iran. So these are generally the indicators, I think, that would suggest that military action is coming. Now, I would also put this a bit in a historical context. This is a clash that's been brewing for nearly 50 years. Every U.S. president since President Carter has faced a decision whether to use military action against Iran. President Reagan faced the same thing, President Bush, President Clinton, and all the other successive presidents. So this is a no surprise, I think, that we've ended up here. Chip is right. I think the negotiating positions appear to me irreconcilable. So I think all the trends seem to suggest that we're moving in the direction of military action.
Yeah. So, Blair, I had a question for you. So the UK Prime Minister is not allowing the United States to use British bases for any type of strike. What are the implications of that for U.S. force options?
Yeah. Great question, Martin. So obviously, I'm not privy to those discussions, so hard to characterize how much truth there is behind those statements. But UK does provide generally helpful access to its bases, namely, the base that they maintain in Cyprus. which will be important for the defense of Israel against Iran retaliation, as well as the access to base in Diego Garcia. So again, I don't know sort of like what the ultimate verdict is, where those conversations are with the UK, but the access to those bases would be important. But I suspect if the answer is no from the UK, that the Pentagon has worked through alternatives.
Great. Chip, one last question for you is,
Yeah.
to me, it feels like the Iranians have not accepted the reality of what's going on since, 12-day war, Operation Midnight Hammer. Their rhetoric still is reflective of, pre-events that happened that degraded their capabilities, I think. So I think you have sort of like a mismatch of reality and ambition in terms of diplomatic goals. But in reality, I think there's not much left there. Like, between the capabilities that we have in the region, obviously Israelis, there. I don't think that they realize that they don't have a strong card anymore, with what happened in the region since, October 7th.
Well, I agree with you that their ability to strike back, by the way, I do think if the United States and Israel were to attack Iran, there would be some form of retaliation, but I think it would be measured and degraded compared to what Iran could have delivered, 6-9 months ago. That said, I have a slightly different take. I think Tehran actually sort of has kind of priced in the possibility or probability of a U.S. strike. The issue for them is regime survival. And to capitulate to or accept what the U.S. had put on the table in Geneva, would have been regime threatening, I think, in their estimation. I think they've considered that they may have to live without a nuclear capability, but having done so without having to capitulate to the United States may be an unwelcome but potentially acceptable outcome.
And not to mention, the internal protests, 20 to 30,000, casualties from the regime against its own citizen. I think, as I said, I don't think the cards are as they used to be on their side. And so I think we're getting at the point now that, maybe this president will really complete what something was started, as Ulber said, for many, many administrations ago. Yeah,
with technological advances, improvements to the U.S. forces, I think it's within the grasp of President Trump to actually get closer to that obliteration, to use that term that he used a few weeks ago, that obliteration level of destroying Iran's nuclear capability with the forces that they have in the region. We'll see whether Iran blinks. They only have a few days to make a decision.
Part of the challenge here is that you're absolutely right, Uli, that Iran has never been in a weaker strategic position, probably since 1979, with its economy, the proxies, and its military capabilities in shambles. The challenge here is that you're dealing with a supreme leader, an individual who hasn't left his country since 1989, has not traveled anywhere, rarely engages with counterparts. So he just may lack the strategic foresight and the flexibility to make changes to this new reality, and as a result may end up bringing his regime down, which is something that he has tried very hard to preserve for all these years that he's been in power.
Yeah.